2nd, 2024 to order. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Alderman Yamas. Alderwoman Garza.
Here.
Alderman Masiacos.
Present.
Alderman Donnell.
Here.
Alderman Franco.
Here.
Alderman Seville.
Here.
Alderman Tolliver.
Here.
Alderwoman Smith.
Here.
Alderman Bug.
Here.
Alderwoman Babe.
Here.
Alderman Lash.
Here.
Alderman Warman.
Here.
And Mayor Urban is present.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes
So
of June
moved.
18, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting as presented? Motion made by Alderman Smith, second by Alderman Garza. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries by voice vote. Mr. Muhammad, do we have any presentations for this evening?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. As many of you are aware, we held a media briefing earlier today with Alderman Yamas, and we want to play that tonight for this body and the community as a whole. John?
What a difference one season in life can make. For me, that major life shift has happened this spring into summer. In an email sent on Tuesday, June 11th, I shared with neighborhood group leaders in my ward why I had been absent from the previous meeting and why I would probably not be available throughout the summer. Since I was a child, I've always been taught the importance of putting my family first. In March of this year, we received devastating news when my father was diagnosed with stomach cancer. In April, we received even worse news when the oncologist confirmed that it was stage 4. Then in May, he had surgery, and he is currently undergoing an aggressive treatment plan consisting of chemotherapy and radiation. During this time, I am not just his son, I am his primary caregiver. In addition to taking him to all his medical appointments and treatments, which are sometimes daily, I take care of him around the clock, including administering his feeding tube. As he undergoes the more aggressive portion of his treatment, I have decided to focus on him, his health, and the overall well-being of my family. This is an extremely overwhelming and challenging time for me as a dedicated son, a present husband, a father of a 3-year-old and a 5-month-old, a full-time business owner, and a responsive alderman. When I look at the foreseeable future and what is best for my family, it is clear that something has to give and be sacrificed. After much prayer and discussion with my family, I have decided to step down from my position as Ward 1 Alderman effective August 1st, 2024. This decision does not come lightly. I am very proud to serve the ward where I was born and raised and where my family has lived for generations. I have been proud to serve as an alderman for the past 5 years and had planned to serve my second term and beyond. But life has presented me with a different capacity in which I must be of greater service to my father and my family. I thank the residents of Ward 1 for their vote of confidence in me, not once, but twice. Now, I ask for your prayers as my family and I face these challenging times together. I will work with my successor to ensure a smooth transition in leadership. Thank you, Aurora.
First, I would like to thank Alderman Yamas for his service to the city of Aurora. Thank you, sir. You have been a great alderman for the city of Aurora, not just one term, but 2 terms, elected by the people. But now that Alderman Yamas has determined that he wants to take care of his family and step down from this position, it is our responsibility, my responsibility as mayor, to make sure there is no interruption in service to our community. So from July 3rd through July 13th, we'll be taking applications from residents of Ward 1 to replace Alderman Yamas. Now, our prayers go to Alderman Yamas, his family, and his father. And I wish your father a speedy recovery in his treatment. But the work of the city of Aurora must go on. So I look forward to accepting these applications from residents, interested residents of Ward 1, so we can make sure you can continue to get the service provided from your alderman that you deserve.
If we can give Alderman Yamas a round of applause for 5 years of dedicated service. He's a child of Aurora. Before I turn it to the mayor, tomorrow morning the application process will go live for the next 10 days. Mayor Urban.
We appreciate the service of Alderman Yamas being elected to Ward 1 Alderman not just once, but twice. But the fact that he wants to step up for his family and his father and take care of them is a very honorable thing for him to do. I'm sure not a very difficult decision, because he loved his position as Alderman of Ward 1 and serving and representing the residents of our community. As one like me that grew up here, born and raised. He grew up on the east side, and East Aurora Tomcat just like me. So we had that and many other things in common. He's a lawyer as well. But we wish his father Godspeed in his recovery, and wish Emmanuel Yamas good luck in his future. I'm sure this won't be the last time we hear Emmanuel Yamas's name. Madam Clerk, do we have any members of the public wishing to offer public comment?
We do, Mr.
We
Mayor.
read the rules of public comment, please.
Pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, all persons shall be permitted an opportunity to address public officials under the rules established and recorded by the council. Under our rules, any person may address the committee of the whole for up to 3 minutes, with a maximum of 30 minutes allotted for all public comment. No person other than the timekeeper or the chair, for the purpose of maintaining order, may interrupt a person recognized for public comment during his or her comments. Members of the committee of the whole shall not engage with nor respond to a speaker during the time set aside for public comment. Staff is directed to follow up with members of the public with respect to any concerns raised during public comment within the scope of the city's authority following the adjournment of this meeting.
Madam Clerk, will you call the first speaker?
Matthew Orr.
Matthew Orr. I don't see Mr. Orr in the council chambers. Can you call the next speaker?
Edward Ash.
Where do I go?
Mr. Ash, you have 3 minutes to speak. Beginning now.
I gave a long time before I came back. It seems like business is going very well, right? Seems like through your Facebook posts, all the pictures of the great community events, right? All the things that you all are involved in. But there's one thing that you all definitely are not involved in. One thing that almost all of you all have looked away from. Now, before I go through that, the only person here that has at least had the courage to try to understand, to try to listen to the people is Mr. John Lash. To the community, to what people are saying, so that they can understand, no matter if they agree or not. That is the job of all of you all. But unfortunately, every time I come here and I speak about injustice, and I'm not just talking about injustice that happened to somebody else, I'm talking about the injustice that has happened to me. It never is enough. And then you guys get your lawyers, and then they play a dirty game, right? And then we have Miss Patty Smith here. The last time I tried to come and conduct some business downtown, she accused me of threatening her life. Now, this is an alderman. Now, what type of character does that show? Not to mention your police department is corrupt also. You had the change initiative talking about all the things that don't need to be changed because you had already had them in process. But then here we go, on June 19th, right? Juneteenth, I go to the police station to file a criminal police report against a police officer, and guess what happened? They denied me. They denied my rights, which is a federal right. And you know why? Because they're going and they're protected by people like you, who are lawyers, who are corrupt, who deny the truth and bend the law to try to threaten and harass and retaliation towards somebody else like myself. Now, I have the right to defend myself, and I have the right to freedom of the Constitution as everybody else does. But unfortunately, when you're a lawyer like yourself, things get mixed up and gray areas come in. And then when you have a whole law department that is against the community also and biased against what's going on, it's not safe for a person like me when that many people of power are taken out of their realm.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Call the next speaker.
Mercy Galicia.
Ms. Galicia, you have 3 minutes to speak beginning now. Feel free to adjust the microphone.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Good evening, City Council, gentlemen and ladies, Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank all my sponsors and people that came out to support us. We had a wonderful time at the festival this weekend. I don't know how we did financially, but everybody that came out, we had people from Ohio, from Michigan, from Wisconsin, and again, not a lot of people, but we had at least 500 people, over 500 people there. We had a good turnout. We got nothing but praise of how happy they were. Very peaceful. Everybody had fun. The kids had fun. The presentation was nice. So thank you again for coming out and supporting us. We will be doing our scholarship dance, hopefully, our presentation by the early August. And again, thanks for everyone that did support us and came out to see us. And I hope we'll do it again the last weekend of June next year, 2025. Again, thanks again.
Do you have any additional speakers, Madam Clerk?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
All right, let's go on to the next portion of the agenda. Actually, we're going to do a staff report, the next portion of the agenda. Is there someone from staff that is prepared to give a report this evening?
Good evening.
Mr. Alexandru.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I'm Alex Alexandru, Chief Management Officer. We would like to update the council and the community on our special census, including next steps. There is an item to be considered before you for the cost estimate, the memorandum of agreement with the Census Bureau for the special census that we're planning. So first off, I wanted to let everybody know why we are here today. As you recall, pretty well-known outcome from the 2020 census that the city was underreported by approximately 17,000 residents, lost population. In our review since then, and Alex Voigt, and I'll introduce the rest of our team as well, we'll go into kind of the timeline and the significant efforts that our team has undertaken. But to sum it up, basically, we encountered the perfect storm of undercounting errors created by a number of situations at the time. One, of course, the pandemic. The other was the significant census-related issues regarding the election year and the change of administrations. Also, it came out in our review that there was...
Just to be clear, that's the presidential administration.
Presidential, yes, sir, thank you. Thank you for clarifying. And the untested technology that was being utilized at the time. So when you combined the impact of the pandemic, the election year, the change of presidential administration, the question that had been insisted upon, that created quite an uncertain and chaotic situation for a very long time, and the untested technology, we inexplicably wind up with an almost 17 or 18,000 magical loss of population. So we are here to preview for you and go through the next steps. Clearly, the need is to do a special census. I want to introduce our team. In addition to myself, we have Alex Voigt, the Deputy Chief of Staff, Chris Minnick, our CFO. We have Jamie Lee, our Harvard Fellow. Joan Cameron, our census consultant, Tim Shields, GIS manager, Matthew Berry, GIS analyst, Karina Suarez-Darden, community outreach specialist, and Matt Morgan, our federal lobbyist. So I want to turn it over now to Alex Voigt, who's going to go over some additional information and data on why we're here.
All right, thank you, Alex. Good evening, City Council. Just to take us back to why we are here today, as reported by the Census Bureau in 2010, the City of Aurora had a population of 197,899 residents. According to the 2019 American Community Survey, we had 199,927 residents. We were feeling confident going into the 2020 census, which then resulted in the reported loss of about 17,000 people, just under 10% of our residents, according to the Census Bureau. So what we want to do tonight is talk about what we've been up to for the past 3 years. We appreciate everyone's patience and continued interest in this process and giving us the time to really work through all of the areas of opportunity with the Census Bureau and really come to a point where we feel as confident as we will with presenting what is next, which is a special census. Exhibit B, John, if you can move to the next slide. So under new business, there is an item requesting the City Council provide approval of a memorandum of agreement with the Census Bureau, which will allow us to move forward with scheduling a special census. With that, I wanted to highlight what we have been up to, and this is Exhibit B on that item itself. It's not an all-encompassing list of the actions and activities taken by staff, but what we wanted to do was provide an overview of all of the different avenues we've taken, how we've pursued different things, the different people that we've spoken to, processes we've availed ourselves to. And I know on this list we were talking earlier, when you see 7 maps, that doesn't seem like a big deal, but when you hear from Tim Shields and our GIS department, it is a significant undertaking, given all of the obstacles and requirements that the Census Bureau puts on these. So certainly looking forward to hearing your questions on that. Just before I switch over, I just want to emphasize that the city has exhausted all of our administrative remedies at this point, and the point of pursuing a special census is our next best option to begin to rebuild and recover financially. So on that note, I'm going to hand it over to Chris Minnick.
Thank you, Avi. Chris Minnick, Chief Financial Officer for the city. So why is this important? Why is the census undercount a big deal, and why should the residents of the city and you as elected officials care? Well, certain tax revenues from the state of Illinois are based on population. So the undercount actually results in a significant amount of lost revenue to the city. Some of the revenue types that the state distributes to municipalities and units of local government based on population include the city's share of the distribution of the state income tax, the local use tax, the motor fuel tax, transportation renewal revenues, and the adult use cannabis tax. These revenues approximate $250 per resident on an annual basis. And how does the city use these funds? Well, the city doesn't necessarily specifically identify specific revenue streams to offset specific expenses within the city. However, we do utilize these revenues to help keep our overall lower or property tax burden lower on our residents, as well as the local tax burden overall. These revenues are utilized for roadway maintenance and transportation projects. The motor fuel tax funds are indeed limited by state law to be able to, or to be utilized for these types of revenues or these types of expenditures and projects, as well as the purchase of roadway salt. Additionally, we utilize some of the non-restricted revenues for general governmental expenditures, services, and programs such as public safety, public works, community services, and special events revenues or expenditures and programs as well. And when you take a look at and consider the overall impact of a loss of approximately 17,000 people, that results in a city loss of approximately $4,300,000 in revenue annually. It's important to note this revenue loss occurs at no fault of the city. The city simply maintained its business, did its business. The Census Bureau went out, and there was an undercount as a result of the efforts of the Census Bureau. The $4,300,000 lost revenue on an annual basis is based on the loss of 17,000 people as compared to the 2010 census. That breaks out to be about $3.6 million to the general fund on an annual basis, and approximately another $700,000 in motor fuel tax and transportation revenues. As we discussed a moment ago, those motor fuel tax revenues are limited by state law as to what they can be expended upon. So as of last week, the undercount has resulted in lost revenues to the city to date of approximately $10,900,000. That's a significant amount of money that has occurred over the past couple of years as the results of the Census Bureau's efforts in the 2020 census have worked their way through the system. Additionally, we do estimate that the special census process will take an additional amount of time to complete, even if we begin the process tonight. That will result in approximately $17,425,000 of lost revenue before the city can begin to receive additional revenue or get a new census count, resulting in additional revenue. That $17 million figure represents approximately the cost of one of the satellite fire stations that we will be constructing over the next 2 years. And again, it's important to note the $17 million that we stand to lose between now and the end of the census process cannot be recovered. There is no process in state statute to allow for a retroactive recovery of any of that lost revenue. And if the city were to do nothing, if the city were to decide to do nothing and allow the results of the 2020 census to stand until the 2030 census was completed, we estimate that that would be approximately a $43 million loss to the city. So when we talk about doing nothing is not an option, that's the impact of the undercount on the city's finances over that 10-year period. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Matt Morgan, who's going to go over some more of the impacts of the census.
It's good to be here with you this evening, even though it's in a less than fortunate discussion relative to the census. But my name is Matt Morgan, and I'm a federal lobbyist for the city. And what I'm going to try and explain at this section of the presentation is the question that's clearly going to be rattling around in everyone's mind. Well, how did this happen? What happened nationally? What have we done in advance of this discussion of the special census? And so the Census Bureau has all but admitted out loud, in public records, that they know there was an undercount. The current presidential administration would point back at the previous presidential administration, as Alex said, as part of the perfect storm that led to some of these problems, to say that the way they managed the census, that would be their current statement, led to the results you see on the screen, which is the state of Illinois being undercounted by approximately 2%. I even think the governor thinks that's higher, but I'm just saying what the Census Bureau itself has said out loud. The diverse and minority populations across the country, African-American populations, Latino populations, and renters as well. Rental units became a challenge, especially during the pandemic. Again, as Alex Alexandria said earlier, this kind of confluence of the pandemic and the way the previous administration managed it. And there is actually one more piece to the perfect storm that I'm going to get to here in a second. But the Census Bureau has admitted it's been undercounted. And the challenge of the Bureau, though, is that under the federal law and the way the federal law administers the United States decennial census every 10 years, there is no specific way for the Census Bureau to rerun the census. So in essence, you have to exhaust your administrative remedies or request a special census. That's what the United States government would tell you that you need to do. There's been one additional challenge. I'll get to our advocacy efforts here in a second because we just didn't take this laying down. But I want to add one more point, though, that you will hear about. I hope in your mind that you're thinking to yourself, well, why don't we just go back to 2010 and figure out how the city was counted, look at 2020, compare the different census blocks and figure out where the undercount was and go attack it and go, use that data and use that evidence to make our point and make our case. The federal government, for the 2020 census, for the first time in history, instituted something called differential privacy. As we get through this process more, you may hear about it more. So I do feel like it's our obligation to at least inform you as the council. What is differential privacy? What is that? What was that new thing that was instituted in 2020 that created such a problem? So the United States government, under Title 13 of the United States Code, has a responsibility to keep data of its United States citizens private in certain circumstances. Noble goal, right? We want to protect the privacy of our citizens and not expose people to or invade their privacy in any way. Except what the Census Bureau decided that meant for themselves is that they needed to blur, or by their words, inject noise into the final counts to make it harder for the bad guys, so to speak, or fraudsters out there to get at the personal data at the census block level. So Tim Shields in a minute is going to talk about census blocks, but just imagine two of your neighborhood blocks next to each other. Let's say there's 10 houses on one block, 10 on another. So what the United States Census was concerned about was, well, hey, if we say there's 20 people in block A at 10 houses, but only 8 in block B, that fraudsters could figure out exactly who lives in what house, and that could be a problem, and that could be some sort of fraud problem, or that could expose people's privacy. So the United States government instituted differential privacy. So at the census block level, the way they're reporting the 2020 census is blocks that are next to each other like that, instead of reporting 10 houses here, 10 houses here, 20 people here, 8 people here, they're blurring the lines intentionally. So they'll say, well, amongst those two blocks, there's 20 homes and 28 people. And you can't figure out in which block, like you could in 2010, who was in which block. So while that may protect people's privacy, it has made it almost impossible for the city of Aurora to figure out where these population losses came from specifically. And that has been part of the perfect storm problem that we've experienced. Now we know, if we could we go back a slide? One slide. We know in the city, the larger populations of African American populations, Latino populations, and renters. But when Tim Shields comes up and talks, he had to focus building his maps out, all 7 of them, with this framework. Instead of a simple framework where they'd say, let's look at 10, let's look at 20. This differential privacy blurring that the United States government and the United States Census Bureau implemented became a real challenge for us to build maps like you would intuitively or logically think. So now we can go back forward on the slide. So the mayor and I have had meetings with our federal representatives. I have met with staff at the United States Census Bureau. We've met with staff on the federal government. We've had a host of meetings to raise the problem of differential privacy and all of its problems that it's causing the city of Aurora. Regrettably, what we have found is what I would define as a collective action problem. Each community in the United States that's affected by this, if we could kind of all get together and agree that this was all a problem and work kind of joint and in tandem, we could kind of attack this better. But each community is in its own way doing what's best for its own community and making it, in my estimation, hard for us to get a good audience at the congressional level. Once the congressional districts were set post-census, I think our members of Congress have been helpful, very helpful. But I think Congress as a whole has been kind of complacent then. Once their congressional districts were set after the decennial census, this kind of concept of differential privacy is something to be dealt with in 2030. There's not a lot of congressional will to deal with it, notwithstanding our advocacy efforts, sitting with the members, raising these issues, trying to advance our position forward. The state of Alabama and other states, but you may hear about this, the state of Alabama attempted to challenge the use of differential privacy in court and lost. That was a further blow to our advocacy efforts because that gave the Census Bureau even firmer ground to say, no, we're on firm ground and continue to use this bad modeling. For those in the room, in case I've been a little too technical, I like to use this analogy though, if you want to take it home and take it to your constituents. Well, what is differential privacy? Imagine any of your children or any of us when you're in math class in high school. If we all remember, if you just wrote the answer down, your teacher, your professor would say, no, show your work. What differential privacy has regrettably allowed the United States Census Bureau to do is stop showing its work. It just kicks out a number, and it then becomes incumbent on the cities of the United States to figure out where the gaps may be. Now, we have further engaged in a legal and an administrative sense with other processes through the Census Bureau, things called count question resolutions where we can dispute housing counts, people counts, and the rest. But at this point, to attempt to recover the population counts and the challenges financially that stem from that, as was presented right before me, that we believe the best option at this point, even from an advocacy standpoint, is to work with the Census Bureau to do a special census, because the special census can at least allow the city to count the areas where you know your minority populations are highest, where it is most likely the undercount occurred. And so those have been our efforts with the federal government over the past 2 years, working with the mayor's office to at least advocate our position. We're not alone, but that doesn't make any of us feel any better. It's still a tough decision. Now, I can answer questions at the end, but I do know that Tim is going to describe now to you what that map looks like, what a special census might look like. So I appreciate everyone's time and forbearance with an otherwise somewhat wonky or nuanced topic. Thank you.
Good evening, City Council. Tim Shields, GIS Manager. So what I was going to start with was just kind of setting the stage of what the census geography is. So we're level setting on what the map is going to look like, because when we're designing these maps, we're using census blocks and census tracts to determine the areas that we're looking at. So I do have on the presentation just the hierarchy of the various geographies that the Census Bureau has. And a census tract definition being a subdivision of a county that generally has a population size between 1,200 and 8,000 people with an optimum size of 4,000 people. And then the census block being the statistical area that's bounded either by visible or non-visible boundaries, such as roads, streets. They're small in area, and they could comprise something like a city block that's closed off by streets on all four sides. And it is the basis that all of the then data is brought up to the other geographies on. So it's the lowest level of geography that you can look at to get the highest level of detail. So if you'd like to go to the next slide. So here is the map that we had worked with the Census Bureau to vet and have designed. What you'll see in the orange are census blocks, and what's in yellow are census tracts. And so what I'm showing in yellow are the census tracts that are wholly within the corporate limits of the city of Aurora, because one of the requirements to conduct a special census is you have to start with at least one full tract within your governmental unit. So what we were looking at for those 7 tracts in the center, those are going to be our anchors. If we're going to do anything for a special census, we have to start in one of those 7 areas, and everything else has to be contiguous off of the anchor tract that you choose. So for us, what we were trying to identify through this process is we wanted to be able to make data-driven decisions, but because of things like differential privacy, we weren't able to remedy the data discrepancies between our data and the Census Bureau's data, so we could be very calculated in the areas that we were targeting. So the ultimate goal here was to combine the areas where we had the largest data discrepancies and the areas where we've had new development going on in the city since April 1st of 2020. So what you're seeing here is a combination of that, and on the next screen is removing the census geographies and showing it how does that line up with the wards of Aurora. So we're really focusing on the data discrepancies and the areas of new development, so we're able to account for all of the growth and development that we've had in the city of Aurora since the 2020 census. On the next slide is a breakdown of what does that look like in numbers. So we'll have a total of 715 census blocks that we are looking to have the special census conducted in, which comprises an estimated housing unit count of 18,762 with an estimated population of 58,499 within this special census area. In the new construction areas that we've had throughout the city, we have an estimated number of units being 1,626, but a good majority of those probably aren't going to be completed and occupied in time for the special census, but that's what we currently have is potential new housing units that could be added that aren't currently accounted for in any of the data within the Census Bureau. So with that, I will be turning it over to Jamie Lee, our Harvard Fellow, to talk about the work that we're doing around community engagement.
While Jamie is coming up, I just wanted to refresh the council's memory. So Jamie is here when you encounter a problem that you've never encountered before, which would be our reported loss of 17,000 residents. You need new tools. You need to do something new and different. So the city had the opportunity to apply. It was a competitive process to have a Harvard Fellow for 2 years at no cost to the city. The requirement for the application process was to create an anchor challenge, a challenge that would be enticing to these Harvard students in their master's program. So we felt that our census challenge would be enticing. It's interesting, lots of different problems, different areas, different paths to take. So Jamie's going to talk a little bit about how what she's been doing the past year, and then what she'll be doing the next year.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Jamie Lee, Harvard Fellow for the Mayor's Office. Given the context and given everything that my colleagues just spoke about, I started as a Harvard Fellow at the city to address the census challenge in August 2023. Many people still ask me what a Harvard Fellow is, and I tell them that Harvard Fellows are placed in different city halls across the country to tackle very complex and difficult challenges facing the host cities. My colleagues are working on a variety of issues across the country. My anchor challenge in Aurora was to build a stronger community engagement infrastructure through the Special Census Initiative. As soon as I arrived in Aurora in August last year, I immediately started collecting data. For the first phase of my fellowship, I did intensive data collection. I conducted document analysis, surveyed, and interviewed over 100 residents about their attitudes and barriers towards census participation. And I talked with key stakeholders and organizations that were involved in the 2020 census. All this research work culminated in a 40-page final report, which has now become the blueprint for our census outreach and education efforts. For the second phase of my fellowship, my colleagues, my amazing colleagues, Karina Suarez, Tim Shields, and I put together a wonderful team consisting of citizen engagement interns and members of the Mayor's Office, Harvard Bloomberg Youth Advisory Board. Quite a mouthful. They are a passionate, committed, innovative group of young people eager to make changes in their communities. And I'm very proud to have the team here with me today. And if the team, the whole first row, can please stand up. And Rochelle. Our team has already been hard at work collaborating with community groups, churches, businesses, schools, and healthcare institutions for outreach and education. We feel that the special census is a real moment for collective empowerment in the city of Aurora, an opportunity to reach out to our hard-to-reach minority communities and to hear the voices of those who are often not heard. We hope that the alderwoman and the aldermen here can become our partners in this important initiative. So please feel free to contact our team with any events or activities in your wards that we can join to spread the message about the special census. So thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. I would like to emphasize that this group of students and Aurora residents that Jamie has put together, they are incredible. They are incredible. They are so smart and so committed and so passionate, and I really think that you'll all enjoy getting to work with them and getting to know them. So I just want to add, she's done amazing work in her year here. So this chart here lays out essentially the process for a special census. So the blue arrow is where we are now. We've received a cost estimate, and just for reference, this is our third cost estimate. This is the one we are asking the council to approve, the memorandum of agreement and payment, and then Tim and his team will review and verify the maps. The second phase is the internet self-response. This is a critical part of the process. And when we get to this point, we will be visiting with all of you. We will be enlisting you, your ward groups, your community members, everyone, because this is our opportunity to ultimately lower the cost of the actual special census. The more people that participate in the internet self-response, the less money we have to spend with the enumerators going door to door. And with the time of year that we will be conducting the special census, we're hoping that people will be in their house, it will be chilly, and they will be responding to our census electronically, so we don't have to have such extensive field work.
And I want to add to that, Ms. Voigt, that, although we were miscounted by 19,000 people, our self-response work that we did in 2020
Yes.
far surpassed what we did in 2010. So Aurora did our part 5 to 10% higher than in 2010. However, the Census Bureau did not do their part. So we're looking to do much higher than we did in 2020, which surpassed what we had done in the past.
Yes, and the benefit, if you will, is with the special census, we will be very targeted in where we're reaching out to, and that's where we will be relying on all of you to support. Inevitably, there will need to be field work and enumeration activities. Recruitment and hiring of staff, that is the city's responsibility. They are employees of the Census Bureau, but it is our responsibility to recruit individuals to work with the Census Bureau. Again, we will be coming back and visiting with all of you. We will be looking for residents, individuals looking for jobs, a short-term job, but more to come on that. And then just in closing for my part, our tentative special census day will be in March of 2025. The exact date will come after we've completed all of our paperwork on the memorandum of agreement, but we are looking right now at March of 2025. So with that, I believe Alex and Chris Minnick are going to close out.
Thank you, AV. So Chris and I wanted to close out with a few comments about the return on this investment. This is a lot of money we're asking you to approve. It's over $1 million for this effort. So I hope you all understand that clearly doing nothing is not an option. In fact, one thing we left out was at the very beginning of this process, as we were sort of untangling the web of this undercount and all of these different missteps by the Census Bureau, it occurred to us that this is not just about 2020. This is about 2030 and beyond. Because remember, this happens every 10 years. So it's incumbent on us to set the record straight and correct it not just as soon as we can, which will result hopefully in the special census next year, and we will stop the loss of funds that we so desperately need, especially general fund as well as the transportation funds. So it's setting that bar where it should be for 2030 and beyond. So we are asking you, as aldermen, ward aldermen, as aldermen at large, to join us in this citywide effort. Join us in supporting these magnificent young people that have stepped up to be interns in this process, and they inspire us to really think about what is at stake. And this is not just about money. This is about correctly setting the population for our city, for our community. It affects the composition of the ward map, that we know we had issues. We had to spend money as a result of the undercount. We don't want to do that again. So I'm asking all of you on behalf of the mayor, our wonderful team, and our community to rise to this census challenge. We did it in 2020, as the mayor said. We had a tremendous initial response, which was within our control. But then when we turned it over to the Census Bureau, that's when things went awry. So one point about the map, the 7 attempts that we made, hampered by this differential privacy. I don't think the team mentioned, if you look at the map, there's these very thin little lines, and they connect different parts of the city. They insisted on something called point contiguity. So we were operating, I think, through 6 of the maps on point contiguity, and then inexplicably, which as you can tell lately, that's one of my favorite words, inexplicably, on a call, the Census Bureau said, oh, remember that point contiguity thing? Try and comply with it. The whole time before, we were told, comply. So Tim and his team did an amazing job putting this map together to capture the combination of new development as well as existing neighborhoods where we know we are primed to succeed with counting the most people we can. So I want to turn it over to Chris.
Before you turn it off to Mr. Minnick,
Yes, sir.
turn it over to Mr. Minnick,
Yes,
I
sir.
want you to answer a question, and I expect there will be a question, if not someone from the council, someone from our community, that says, what if we, and I know that we know the answer to this question, what if we spend this $1 million for a recount to find these 19,000 people that really never went missing? What if we do this and we don't, in actuality, find those 19,000 missing households or missing individuals?
Well, first of all, Mayor, we have to spend the $1 million through the special census process in order to requalify for the funds that we're losing. We can't independently do our own investigation. We have to do it within the confines of the Census Bureau rules. So it's not a recount per se. It has to be a special census limited to the map that you see before you. So that
And also the fact that these tracts of homes that the Census Bureau suggests are missing are in fact still there.
Absolutely, and we know that with a number of different data points that we have. For example, if these folks were truly missing, we would have seen a massive uptick in foreclosures, a massive amount of vacant buildings and homes. Our water billing would have dropped substantially in the number of accounts. None of those objective standards apply here. And so as much as we pointed these things out to the Census Bureau, they kept pointing us back to go through these administrative processes and steps. That's what we did. None of that gave us the relief we needed. And the worst part of all of this, other than the loss of money, is who it's affecting. And unfortunately, sadly, our experience is mirroring what happened nationwide. So why should our communities of color suffer because of the errors promulgated by the Census Bureau and their process? And you would think, I used to negotiate union contracts, and retroactivity was all the rage, right? When we would delay sometimes in contracts. And the city would step up, the council would approve contracts with retroactive pay. We asked that in the first meeting. If we correct this quickly, efficiently, can we get the money back? No. It's a going forward basis. So literally, our hope is we get the result that we need. Soon as it gets certified, we're running quickly. I don't know how fast we can get down there to Springfield to deliver to the Secretary of State, and immediately the spigot turns back on.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Minnick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I can expound a little bit on Alex's answer to the previous question. You know, we talk about there being two essentially impacted communities or two prongs of attack, if you will, with regard to the special census. One is addressing the undercount in the established areas of the city. With the documented undercounts and the procedures that the Census Bureau has discussed and talked about that were presented a little earlier this evening, as well as the fact that you consider the second prong of the attack for the special census, which is counting the new areas of the city, it seems extremely likely that given the costs that we anticipate and the revenue that we stand to recover until the results of the 2030 census are certified, we need to find approximately 1,150 people to cover the costs of the special census that we anticipate. And again, given the undercounting in the existing areas of the city, as well as the new development, which represents new revenue and areas and housing units that have never been counted before, we view it as extremely likely that we will be able to cover the costs of the special census over that time frame. So,
Thank you, sir.
yes.
At this point, we'll take any questions from the City Council. Alderman Seville.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I've said this before, and I'll continue to say it again and again. I think this is a very worthwhile endeavor, and I'm glad we're moving forward on this. There's no way we could have lost a population the size of a ward district without noticing it. Be it, as Alex mentioned, schools, or the city, the not-for-profits, the housing stock, like you mentioned as well. There's just no way we would have noticed it. With all the advertising going on, with the requesting rentals, that never happened as well. So anyway, I support this. Please continue with all deliberate speed. My question to you is, are there any plans right now with staff, with all the big National Night Out event that we have in August, to man it and put in booths and tables and the like, and to get information out?
You're speaking, Jamie, in the team's engagement language. That's their Super Bowl.
Good.
So they are gearing up for that citywide. There's going to be a massive amount of social media, resident education, resident engagement. Again, you're the leaders in your ward. We have 2 aldermen at large that cover the whole city. We're going to engage with you. We need you to engage with us and our team and open doors for us, introduce us to people. We're putting the full court press on this from here on out. But it starts with your approval of the MOA, and then we follow the path and we launch. So we're very excited. We have a tremendous team assembled. I think even a more talented and diverse team than we had in 2020.
And Alderman Seville, I'd also like you to comment on, I believe we did a special census here in the city of Aurora. Was it 2010 that we did? And actually, when we did that recount, determined that there were extra residents in our city that were not counted before and added to our population, as well as the funding that we got from the federal government. You were here during that time.
Yeah.
And Mr. Mayor,
Exactly.
the other thing to add is all of the projections ahead of the 2020 census had us well over 200,000 people.
Right.
So that, again, made no sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, that
Census.
recount might have been in
No.
2010, in 2000.
Yes.
Yes, 2000.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other, Alderman Smith?
Yes, thank you for this presentation. I've been waiting for this for quite some time, and this is, obviously, I support what Alderman Seville said and support this process. My questions are more of statements and questions that the processes that have been explained and set forward today and the processes that you guys are going to be going through have been set forth by the Special Census Bureau, is that correct? So you know
That
the
is correct.
steps and stages that have to be taken, like the contiguous communities. How tough are they going to be on us and say, we get to the end of it, oops, you forgot this step over here? Are they going to accept our numbers? How thorough are they going to be with us? Are they going to be fair and
Counsel.
accept what we give back to them? Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
Either that or Jamie.
Can they come up and say, oops, you skipped this process, we're not gonna accept this, you need to go back and look again? And I mean, they acknowledge their own wrongdoing, so as long as we're following.
Well, they
their
haven't
steps,
acknowledged
it's-
their wrongdoing as of
Well,
yet.
they don't acknowledge it relative to the city specifically, but
Well,
they acknowledge it
in
globally.
general.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes,
So
yes.
the
Does my question make sense to you?
It does. These steps act more like a gating function. You don't really get to the next gate until you've achieved the previous gate.
Okay, so each gate, they see
So
each
each
gate.
gate as you're moving through it. That's
Okay.
actually why. So it's a great question because it's kind of why there could be. I can see amongst the audience there could be a question. Well, why is it taking like 3 years? It's because it's 3 years of the gating process. And so this is the remainder of the gating process. So it is unlikely that you get to the end where they say, oh, you skipped a step, you lose. It's more about the effort going into it now to get the highest response rate probable. So the response rate of the citizenry is your biggest risk at the moment, not so much the regulatory process of the Bureau itself at this point.
So
As
that
long as we're
makes
flowing
sense,
through here.
that each gate, you can't move forward until you've
Correct.
closed the gate and opened up the next one.
Correct,
Okay,
yes.
Thank
So
you for
I
that
hope that-
additional.
I hope
yes,
that helps them.
Absolutely, thank you.
So if you look at those, I'll call them maroonish 6 boxes, once that end of self-response happens, we'll know how many we're chasing, because just like last time, it was over a 70% self-response rate. So we'll know, so then you can see, we have to open a local census office, we have to recruit and hire staff. Then there's that continued community outreach. We don't stop our efforts. At that point, we're gonna have Census Bureau employees and staff and their additional marketing and outreach as well. And there's a box there that says quality assurance. We are taking nothing for granted. We are gonna be all over them constantly with our team, making sure they do everything they need to do. We don't have, knock on wood, we don't have a pandemic to operate this in. We don't have whatever the other issues we talked about at the onset. So it should be a much different outcome, and we're not gonna stop. And then even the tabulation activities, there's nowhere in there where they're gonna say you did something wrong, because they've approved this
Okay.
map and we're moving forward.
Thank you for that clarification. And Mayor, thank you for putting this time and effort into our city to make sure that each individual person in the city is counted for the benefit of all of us. So thank you.
Alderman Franco.
So question is, with $1 million, when is this gonna come to the finance committee? When's that process gonna start?
We're ready to bring it forward, correct?
Is this the interview tonight?
Yes, Alderman Franco, this was the item that we spoke to you about, and you graciously agreed that, given that it impacts the entire city, that we would start at committee of the whole. So this is a separate item under new business that we will be asking you to discuss. But that's at the end of the agenda tonight, and it will be hopefully voted on next week, Tuesday, July 9th.
Oh, we have this later on to be
Correct.
voted on? Okay, good.
Yep.
All right. I just wanna make sure that I didn't see the
Yes.
vote in there, I just wanna make sure.
Yeah, we did the
Perfect.
presentation
Right.
separate, but they obviously,
Right.
we're not going to ask you to approve $1 million without giving you the backstory, so.
Well, that's good, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Alderman Buck.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the information. Very appreciated. I was trying to follow everything. So we talked about the 19,000 missing people. So my question is, I was trying to follow the privacy and I know there's tracks, there's blocks, but there's also an overall number of housing units. So my question, I think I asked this the first time when we got those crazy numbers. The overall housing units, because as you said, this privacy thing blurred things, but overall housing units for the city of Aurora, do we have the number? Well, we have a number for 2010. What was the number for 2020, and how did that change? So if we have 19,000 people missing, but we have the same number of housing units, you know when to go to the housing unit, you're going to find the people. I mean, that's...
So the count that came back for housing units was approximately 62,000 housing units.
Okay, compared to...
Do we know that she's looking it up?
2010,
Yes.
67,273.
So 67,273 in 2010.
Down to 62.
Correct. But we also had.
And isn't that the issue? We're saying those houses do not, they're not missing, so they miscounted them?
They evaporated.
And what was the per housing unit average?
Approximately 3.
Right.
But the city itself in 2018 for Lucas said there were 65,000 housing units.
Right, so we, in 2017, we reported 65,000 housing units. So the discrepancy is kind of compounded by the difference in these housing units, and then we know the average per unit was around 3. So that's why when Chris talked about how we're going to recoup, we know how many housing units will at least get us back the million, but now we're obviously chasing to get back to the numbers in the 18, whatever that number is, 18,000-ish missing.
To Alderman Buck's point, now that we have technology and GIS, we can determine today, we should be able to, how many housing units we have. Now, how many people are in those houses is a different story. But
Correct.
units themselves, we can make a determination at some point in the near future.
Correct.
Any other questions, Alderman Buck? Alderman Lesh?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to staff. Excellent presentation. I will definitely be engaged and supportive of this initiative as we move forward. I just wanted to check a couple things that were not clear. Just it's 7 census tracts that we're recounting. Is that accurate, or is it a larger territory?
No, it was 7 maps. We created and submitted 7 maps.
7 different maps.
Right, and this last one was the final one.
The one
that's
they
been
accepted.
approved.
Okay,
Correct.
got it. And how many census tracts are in that total?
There's 30. How many?
So what we had shown in the map was the census tracts that are wholly within the corporate limits. But within the city of Aurora, the corporate limits sit between 53 census tracts, and there's 35 of those census tracts as part of this special census area. But the only ones that are full are the 7 that I had showed you. The rest are going to be partials.
Got it.
Because we can only count the blocks that are within our jurisdiction, and the tracts, because they're at the county level, they come in and out of our jurisdiction. So we have 7 full tracts, and the rest are all partials, which comprises of 35 total tracts, portions of.
7 full maps.
Well, 7 full tracts. And then there was also 7 maps as we were going.
That's where
So
I got
that's-
mixed up.
that was his question.
With all the revisions. So yeah, so we'll be 35 tracts are within the special census area.
That will be counted.
So what are the 7 tracks that we're talking about? Those are the ones in...
Those are the full tracts, where it's every single block within the tract is being counted. The other ones are partial
Okay, that's what's
tracts.
not clear.
Yeah.
So we've got 7 full tracts in the city of Aurora,
Within the special census
which
area.
in the special census area,
And there's 53 total tracts of varying completeness.
in
There's
its
only-
entire city.
Yellow,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, the
Right.
yellow is the
So
7
the
full
yellow
tracts.
are the 7 full tracks that are within.
So as you see, like all the white areas in between the gray, so those
Right.
aren't full tracts within the city because we're going in and out of our
Township.
corporate limits, whether it's township or another town.
And Mayor, if you remember from the redistricting
Exercise.
those white areas, it's very interesting that over the years, those are unincorporated areas surrounded by city.
All right. Thank you, sir. And you said you had another question?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up then. Just to understand the process, once we recount these 7 full and the rest partial tracks, does the number that we come up with in that recounted area, is that what they look at, or do we extrapolate that to the uncounted areas, or the uncounted area? You see what I'm trying to get at?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
The Census Bureau, as part of the agreement, it's actually enumerated in the agreement that they will give us, they will utilize that data to compile an entire new citywide population. That will be what will ultimately be certified to the Secretary of State's office, which then becomes the base for those per capita revenues that I was talking about earlier.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense, and we'll count these areas, and it will apply to the rest of the city's population. They'll calculate the math, because they don't really have I guess they probably have some idea of where they were undercounted, but because of the way that they did, it's not clear. Okay, and then I guess my only other question, just to be clear about it, in the numbers, 17 million is, if we recount this, 17 million is what we'll lose, but we stand to gain 26 million.
Yeah,
Is it
17 million just represents the amount of lost revenue that we lost, again, through no fault of the city.
Sure.
What we estimate we will lose through the time when the census, between the certification of the 2020 census results and the time when we complete the special census process. So, in other words, we are going out for a date in March, becomes our special census day that we start the count and all of the process. We go through that process for approximately the next 8 to 9 months, and we believe that early in 2026, or perhaps with a little bit of luck, late in 2025, is when we will start seeing the new revenues based on the new certified special census number. So the $17 million represents the amount of lost revenue from the certification of the 2020 census through the completion of the special census process.
Okay, thank you. So it is, just so people understand, it's $1 million roll of the dice, calculated roll of the dice, but a potential of gaining 26 million in recovered revenue.
Okay, wait. Let's clearly address the roll of the dice, which seems like we're gambling. It doesn't matter if we calculate, still rolling the dice. There's no calculated roll of the dice. I don't know if you ever roll any dice, but let's talk, because Chris made it a point that this $1 million will be recovered regardless. Is that correct?
We're very confident we'll count at least enough people to recoup the $1 million. But this calculated risk is either, and this is why I said we have no choice but to do this, in our opinion, because we don't do anything, we lose $43 million.
Right.
I agree. Yeah.
Period.
All right. All right, any other questions?
No, thank you,
You're
Mr. Mayor.
welcome.
All right, Alderman Masiacos.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we decided to go down this road a long time ago when we approved a budgetary amount to get to this point as well, first and foremost. But it's great to see these young kids down here in the first row, especially Alderman Garza's grandson, who's been getting a civic lessons, I think, since he could walk. But this is a great opportunity for them to see a little bit more about why their participation is important. But I just wanted to ask a question, make sure, I'm not sure I heard it correct or not, but if I did, if you could help fill in a blank here. I'm not sure who said it, tracks were missing at some point in the presentation, or am I wrong? That were still there?
I believe it's blocks were missing.
Blocks were missing or tracks were missing? And if they're missing, how did they get missed? I mean, is that what we're talking about by the Census Bureau once we turned it in?
I think we're talking about housing units being missed.
Okay.
Is what we're talking about. So that's the discrepancy between like our records and their records. And so we don't have a lot of control over that. We have submitted through all of their programs to get our data in sync.
Okay.
But to date, we have been unsuccessful in synchronizing our databases. So we still know that there are areas in the city where there's discrepancies between our data, which is why we've targeted those areas as part of the special census program as kind of that last effort.
But these 7 tracks these census tracts were included in submission when we first provided numbers to the Census Bureau.
Correct, yeah. So the tracks and blocks themselves don't go missing because those are how they, divvy up, the entire nation.
Okay.
The one slide I had at the beginning kind of showed up how the Census Bureau divvies up all of their various census geographies, whether it's the blocks, the block groups, the tracks, the states and all that. So those have always been there. Now, the boundaries will change based on the results of the decennial censuses. So a lot of these blocks and tracks were split or realigned based on the new population numbers that came in. They might have been assigned a new number, but the tracks and blocks themselves, the geography doesn't go missing.
Okay, all right, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions? Alderman Smith.
May we please get that presentation sent to each alderman?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, with no further,
Just a quick one.
Alderman
And
Lesh.
then I assume there's going to be some training about how to go about counting and recounting and all that, and I'm sure we'll be part of that too.
Yes,
so
sir. Lots of training.
Thank you.
All right, well, that concludes our presentation. Thank you very much, staff and team, and thank you guys for helping us out and making sure that we get this all reset. Appreciate your service to the City of Aurora. All right, let's go on to the next portion of the agenda, committee reports. Chairman Petty, I'm sorry, we do have another presentation? All right, yeah, read the next presentation.
24-0502, discussion of the annexation of certain real property located in Sugar Grove Township, generally bounded by the Kane County Forest Preserve to the east, the Commonwealth Edison property to the west, Progressive Baptist Church to the north, and including the property of the BNSF Railway to the south.
So I just wanted to start out before I turn it over to Tracy Vasek and to Jason Geisinger, our outside counsel. So this is an informational piece for you prior to this going through for council approval, and Tracy will go through in some detail. But as you recall, the city council voted 11-1 to support staff's desire to protest a solar farm going into this parcel in unincorporated King County. And when staff then followed up at the county level, unlike in the past, when almost every time the county would accede to the wishes of the local municipality, the county unanimously agreed to move forward with their process to allow a solar farm here. So we were tasked with looking at what remedies, legal remedies we had to avail ourselves of to prevent this from happening. And so I think that's where I'm going to let Tracy and Jason pick it up from there to explain what our plan is moving forward and what we will be bringing forward to the council for approval soon. So, thank you.
Alderman Sewell.
Just to follow up, did I hear you say it was unanimous on the county board?
That was our understanding.
The
Ed
county
Seaman.
board has not actually,
Oh, the zoning commission.
Yeah, the zoning board of appeals, and, yeah, and I'll get through that. Good evening, Tracy Vasek, Senior Planner with the Zoning and Planning Division. The item before you tonight is just to discuss the possible annexation of the property located in Sugar Grove Township. And you can kind of see on the map the parcels that are outlined there that we would be looking to annex. It's generally bound by the King County Forest Preserve to the east, ComEd to the west, Progressive Baptist Church to the north, and including the property of the BNSF Railroad to the south. All of these properties are within the city's planning jurisdiction, and as you recall, the King County notified the city that it did receive that special use application, as Alex said, for proposed community solar farm for the property along Barnes Road, and that's the one in there's 3 properties in red that would be where the solar farm would be. This property is designated as an estate residential type development, as indicated in the city's countryside vision plan upon its eventual annexation into the city. because of that, the city did envision this property being used for residential purposes rather than a solar energy, and giving to its proximity of the city's limit, the city council did vote the 11-1 to notify the county that its objection to the proposal. To date, the county's zoning board of appeal and the county board's county development committee recommended to the county board that it approve the proposed special use. The county board is scheduled to act on the special use application the meeting of July 9th. So I'll turn it over to Jason. He's going to kind of go into the annexation process, and then I'll come back and kind of tell you the next steps for us to get to move on this annexation.
All right, thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. So what we looked at was how we could annex the property that is bordered in red on the map that you have before you, which would bring it within the planning and the zoning jurisdiction of the city of Aurora. So under the Illinois Municipal Code, property can be forcibly annexed if the property meets two geographic characteristics. The first is that it needs to be under 60, it needs to be 60 acres or under, and this property meets that qualification, because I believe it's like 35 or 40.
So it's about 40.
It's about 40 acres, so it meets that qualification, no question. The second characteristic that it has to have is it has to be wholly bounded. And there's a variety of ways under the Illinois Municipal Code that property for forcible annexation purposes can be considered wholly bounded. For our purposes here, it could be considered wholly bounded if it's wholly bounded by one or more municipalities and a forest preserve district. So if you take a look at the annexation property, if you look at the west boundary, I'll start there, of the property, you see that vertical strip parcel that runs along that western boundary of the annexation property. That's ComEd right-of-way. The annexation statute says that public utility right-of-way does not destroy continuity between a potential annexation property and a municipality. So on that particular side, it is in fact, for legal purposes, bounded by the city of Aurora. So we're good there. On the northern boundary of the property, you see the property that's highlighted in yellow. That's property that's already within the city of Aurora. So we have the property being wholly bound on that northern boundary as well. With respect to the eastern boundary, you see that we have forest preserve property, the property that is directly to the east of the annexation property is forest preserve property. And as I indicated, we can effect a forcible annexation if it's wholly bound by one or more municipalities in a forest preserve district. So that's what we have there with respect to the eastern boundary. Now, the southern boundary presents an issue because the border of the southern boundary is BNSF Railway, and immediately to the south of that is unincorporated property. So we've reached out to BNSF, and what we have come up with them is that they would voluntarily annex the property that's highlighted in blue that is immediately to the south, and then that property would become part of the city of Aurora, and as a result, the southern boundary would also be wholly bound for purposes of the forcible annexation statute. So based upon that, it's my opinion that the city, assuming we do the voluntary annexation of the BNSF right-of-way at the southern border, that it would be wholly bounded and eligible for a forcible annexation by the city.
And just so we're clear, Tracy, once we annex these properties into the city of Aurora, we no longer have to go to the county and ask for permission for anything. They'll be part of the city, and this council will make the determination of how we go forward. Is that correct?
Correct.
Any questions from the alderman? Alderman Franco.
Well, I'm very happy to see this balanced by the 5th Ward, but I'm especially happy about this because the will of the people spoke 11-1. 10 aldermen who have geographic areas and 1 alderman at large. So when 11-1 happens, it's the will of the people. I'm happy about this because it's very disturbing that we had one of our aldermen go to a meeting, lobby against the will of the people for their personal agenda. It was very inappropriate and very disturbing. So I'm glad we're doing this, because at a certain point in time, when Aurora speaks, we all have to be as one. And apparently we're not. So I'm glad we're going this way to get rid of all that garbage and all that nonsense, is doing the right thing for the people on the west side, which I have heard of from my constituents, that they don't want the solar field there. So thank you for that.
Alderman Seville.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to the administration and city staff for listening to my suggestion that we go down this path, because I thought it was a way to protect us and our comprehensive plan and our idea with regard to what should be developed out there and how. So even though I support solar 100%, this is the wrong place for it. It needs to be further west in another venue. So I just want to thank everybody, and I think that's a great idea.
Great idea, Alderman Seville. Alderman Lash.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the other things is all that property that's in sort of the beige area on the west, all of that is currently already annexed. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And we haven't developed that since?
There was a preliminary plan, and portions of it was a final plan. It's Ingham Park subdivision. And so, yeah, they did not come back and finish the subdivision, but.
Since like 2008, 2010, somewhere in there?
Somewhere around there. A little bit, probably 2010.
So the property that we've already annexed is not being developed. What is our plan with the property that we intend to annex here?
At some point, they will come back in for that subdivision. It happens. That's when the downfall of the downfall of the economy at that point in 2010. So they'll come back. Another developer will probably pick it up and develop it.
And then the other question I have, it sounds like based on two of the alderman's comments, I mean, I would be in favor of the annexation if we were going to go ahead with the solar farm, because we would get increased revenue from this property. But I'm guessing that is not the intention.
No, like I said, our plan is to have residential there.
So clearly, let's just say it, the intention is not to have a solar farm at that location, which is the will of the council and what they voted on when you decided, Alderman, to go to the county and go against the council that you serve.
Correct.
So let's just be clear.
Yeah, no, I definitely went to represent my one voice. I was very clear about that, and I'll continue to do that. If the whole council, the rest of the council goes in one direction, they can use their voice to do so. I'll use my voice to back up and defend the votes that I make on this council. So we're clear about that.
Just so we're also clear, this council represents the people of the city of Aurora, not one person and his ideas, but the entirety of the city. But, that's neither here nor there. I'm glad we're voting on this today, and I'm sure, based on Mike Seville's idea, to make sure that we did it this way. Go ahead, Alderman Seville.
Yeah, I just want to add, I believe we would be considering estate zoning just like we have on the far west side. Is that correct?
Correct. It will come in as R1, which is what all of our annexations are. When somebody comes in, we would look to do estate zoning there.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
Alderman Smith?
I don't even want to say this again, but I feel it's very necessary to say again, because we do have one alderman who doesn't understand the will of the people. This is not a fact that we're against solar. We are very pro-solar, and every opportunity that we have had to use and provide a solar farm, we have done. This is just simply not the place for it. There was a plan for this piece of property, and this just simply is not part of the long-term plan. So I am so happy you guys came up with this. Thank you so much for getting this together, and let's move forward.
And based on this presentation, since we're talking about solar, Alderman, Mr. Alexandria, will you step up and talk about the solar efforts that we are currently working on, and how we plan to put hundreds of acres, tens of thousands of acres of
well, we're certainly
solar in the city.
We've launched that project out at the Aurora Airport. We also have, through Jim Burchell and his team, working with our authorized progressive energy folks. We have a plan citywide for public buildings and where it makes sense and where it doesn't. But if I can just address to Alderman Smith's points and Alderman Seville, the city is replete with locations that have been undeveloped for decades. And it's our job, it's been our charge as an economic development team in this administration, and supported by this council largely, to find the highest and best uses for these properties. I can name many situations where, the Prairie Farm property on Prairie sat vacant for decades. The
Del
terminal
Webb-
building,
Del Webb
properties, the Del Webb property, where we said no many times to uses such as garbage dumps and industrial uses. And so, all of you, of course, know what comes with responsible residential development. We get property taxes and we get more residents. More residents will use West Side amenities. They'll use restaurants and bars and groceries and hopefully continue to help us grow the city economy. A solar farm at that location, when it could be estate housing, and but for the crash in 08 to 10, Ingham Park was flying. They had set up infrastructure, and on the Sugar Grove side, I think I recall, they were anticipating between both municipalities perhaps 2,000 or 3,000 housing units. Unfortunately, we couldn't control the national economy. No. We couldn't control the pandemic and its effects on our local economy, but these opportunities are coming. We've got interest every day in parcels all over the city like this. So we felt it was incumbent on us to increase our inventory. And this is one that we told the county, with the hundreds and hundreds of other acres to put solar, they chose this one. And it just wasn't the right fit. You supported staff's initiative, and here we are. So I just want Tracy to talk a bit about the next steps, because we're not voting on it tonight.
Yeah, so the next steps would be, it will go to Building, Zoning, and Economic Development Committee on July 10th. Committee will...
Your microphone went out for some reason. There we go.
That was weird. All right, sorry. Building and Zoning and Economic Development Committee on July 10th, Committee of the Whole on July 16th, and City Council on July 23rd.
Thank you much. Appreciate the presentation, folks.
Quick question
Andrew,
for legal. Mr. Mayor?
What, Alderman Donnell?
Mr. Mayor, I sat on Plan Commission here for 27 years, and we planned the city. We looked forward to that. And on this wall behind us, we used to have a comprehensive plan that showed what the vision for the city had for our community. This particular area, we talked about there was no plan. Well, of course there's a plan. There's a countryside vision plan, which we worked on to make decisions to preserve lands of high beauty and value, so much so that a forest preserve was purchased right next to them. So I'm very happy that we're doing this, and I'm thinking maybe we ought to bring that comprehensive plan back.
Said you had a question for council.
Correct. Just a quick question on the annexation process, legal. Has this legal practice been used where we use a railroad as a boundary, and if so, where?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I don't have any specific examples, but it's a common practice when doing forcible annexations to bring in, to assemble the properties necessary to forcibly bring property in.
And the forest preserve also has been used in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. It's expressly permitted under the Illinois Municipal Code.
Okay. And then, I'll just make my
And even if it's not a common practice, it's legal to use it the way we're using it now.
That's correct.
Correct? And we are using it this way now. And even if one of the aldermen of the 12 disagrees with it, then that's okay. The rest of us do. So thank you very much for the presentation. We appreciate it. We're moving on. And the rest, go ahead, Alderman Seville.
Sorry. I just want to add to this that the city has consistently done forcibly annexations over the many decades, in my memory, which goes back to the 70s when I became involved in the city, where we do forcibly annexation. And it's to the benefit of all to be able to do that. So I have a follow-up question. I think Alex said, if I heard him right, that this is going to be voted upon at the City Council July 23rd. Is that correct? Yeah. And then when does the county board hear this issue itself?
They actually will hear it on July 9th.
July, and what happens if they go against our direction that we're currently moving down?
We will be annexing in the property, so they won't have any jurisdiction, so that
Okay.
the county special use will be null and void.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that what we do, we know that we're overriding them. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Yep. All right, thank you very much for the presentation. Appreciate it. Let's go on to committee report. Are we done with staff reports? Thank you. I didn't know if you want to sneak another one in there on me. Chairwoman Patty Smith, can you get the Building, Zoning, and Economic Development Committee report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Building, Zoning, and Economic Development Committee met on June 26, 2024, and reviewed the following item. This item requires no action today, but I'm going to read it into the record. 24-0464, a resolution approving a final plan for Partial 2 in Aurora Ventures assessment plot located at 4333 Ogden Ave for the expansion of the service area. And, Mr. Mayor, that is all we had for the Building, Zoning, and Economic Development on that day.
Thank you very much. Chairman Franco, can you give the Finance Committee report, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the Finance Committee met on June 27, 2024, and reviewed the following items. 24-0473, a resolution authorizing the Third Amendment to the Second Amended and restated lease between Wholesome MAMR Incorporated, formerly known as Lafarge Aggregates, Illinois, and the City of Aurora. And this agreement will allow Wholesome to maintain the rights to mine the third level of the mine through 2025 in case the IEPA and the city do not move forward with the regulatory approval of the dried lime disposal method conceived in 2016.
Unfinished?
No, I'm sorry, unfinished.
Next one is 24-0484, resolution accepting assignment of the contractual rights and responsibilities of the Seize the Future Economic Development Foundation, Invest Aurora in the past, for the purchase of certain real property located on Bilter Road, and authorizing the city's officers and employees to complete the transaction contemplated by said contracts.
Mr. Debo?
Good evening, David Debo, Director of Economic Development. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor.
For some reason, that mic, we're going to have somebody check the mic just to make sure it's operating appropriately. Try that, brother.
Okay.
Yeah, just plug it in. That's what you got to do.
There you go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, Alderwomen, and Aldermen. Thank you. As the Chairman stated, approval of this resolution will enable the city to accept assignment of purchase and sale contracts for 7 properties in an unincorporated area of Kane County on the north side of Bilter, across from the Premium Outlet Mall. These contracts have closing dates that start this month and run through September of this year. We've taken this action subject to the approval of the council to prevent a circumstance where an industrial use could develop an industrial user could develop a large warehouse, including the traffic that would result in close proximity to residential neighborhoods. Because the properties are not currently within the city limits, they are currently subject to county regulations that are less restrictive than what the city would impose post-annexation. It is our intent immediately after closing to issue an RFQ seeking the best residential developer to build out this site. An additional benefit, the real estate taxes for all the properties are currently less than $50,000 annually. This will rise significantly, well over $1 million, after the improvements, construction improvements to this properties have been made. In summary, the city has decided to take proactive action on this assignment negotiated by Invest Aurora to protect the residential nature of the area and forestall possible undesirable uses on these properties. I want to thank the MOED team, including Alex Manella, who couldn't be here tonight, Chris Minnick, Alex Alexander, and the mayor for their support on this resolution. Open for any questions.
Questions? There being no, I'm sorry, you have a question?
Very quick. I assume you mentioned residential, but we don't have a plan for this?
We do have a plan, but we're not going to talk about it tonight, though.
Right. Other than putting it out for a residential RFQ, do we have someone
we have a
interested?
plan, just not going to talk about it tonight.
Unfinished, thank you.
Unfinished on this one.
Thank you.
And the last item is 24-0490, an update on matters related to the formation and making of a recommendation as to fixing of compensation of elected officials pursuant to the local government Officer Compensation Act. This will be under new business, and we can talk about it there when we get to that point. And, Mr. Mayor, that concludes-
That's for information only at that particular point. We'll talk about it. All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, this concludes the Finance Committee report.
Thank you, kind sir. Chairman Seville, can you give the public health, safety, and, I'm sorry, Alderman Masiacos.
Just a quick question here, the committee, this going back to the committee, or is this gonna just happen now at this point?
We're gonna deal with it under new business. We're gonna talk about it under new business. It's down at the bottom there.
All right, well, thank you.
All right. That concludes finance. Let's go on to Chairman Seville. Can you get the Public Health, Safety, and Transportation Committee report, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The PHS&T Committee met June 25th, 2024. We had one item on the agenda, and that is 24-0474, resolution requesting approval to accept the proposal from TDA Consulting to create the 2025 to 2029 Consolidated Plan and to update the Neighborhood Revitalization Strategy Area Plan in the amount of $62,115. TDA Consulting not only received the highest score evaluation, but also the lowest bid. We have to do this every 5 years. It's a federal requirement. It's to evaluate our neighborhoods. We'd be looking at our census tracts and our revitalization strategy.
Consent.
No objections. I'm going consent.
And that's a report from PHS&T, Mayor.
Thank you, kind sir. Chairwoman Garza, can you give the Infrastructure and Technology Committee report, please?
Yes, Mayor. We met on June 24 this year. The first item in the agenda is 24-0424, a resolution authorizing the purchase of computer equipment for Inside Public Sector, Inc. and Dell, Inc., and total aggregate amount not to exceed $350,000.
No objections. I'm going consent.
24-0433, a resolution authorizing the Director of Purchasing to accept proposal from Alarm Detection Systems, National Technologies, and Signtel Solutions, Inc., totally $9,052,680.45 for the IT and security infrastructure and the new public work combined maintenance facility.
No objections. I'm going consent.
Unfinished.
Oh, unfinished.
24-0435, a resolution authorizing the Director of Purchasing the award a contract of Semper Fi Landscaping, Inc., and the amount of $227,650 for Phase 2 of landscape planting and the new public work combined maintenance facility.
No objections. I'm going consent.
24-0440, a resolution to award a contract to Municipal Well and Pump for well number 105 Swallow Well drilling project in the amount of $712,000.
No objections. I'm going consent.
24-0445, a resolution authorizing the award of contract to Shoulder Asphalt Services, Inc. in the amount of $2,314,894.95 for the 24 citywide right-of-way maintenance project.
No objections. I'm going consent.
We conclude the meeting, Mayor. with this
Oh, thank
item.
you very much. Can Chairwoman I'm sorry. I'm sorry, brother. I know who I said. Chairman Warman, can you give the Rules Administration Procedure? Committee.
4 daughters, that's not a shock.
That's what it is.
Does not offend me one bit, so, thank you. So, Rules Administration and Procedure Committee met on June 18th, 2024, and reviewed the following items. 24-0414, an ordinance establishing the Sister Cities Commission under Chapter 2, Article 6 of the Code of Ordinances.
Consent.
No objections. I'm going consent.
Next item, 24-0465, a resolution authorizing the appointment of Carlos Anaya to the Innovation and Technology Advisory Commission.
Consent.
No objections. I'm going consent.
Next item on the agenda, 24-0466, a resolution approving the appointment of Gloria Ramos, Keisha Varma, and Delaney Barron to the Aurora Youth Council.
Consent.
No objections. I'm going consent.
Next item is information only, 24-0452. This is a revised Alderman's Office policies. It's attached for Alderman review, and that concludes Rules Administration and Procedures Committee.
All right. Thank you very much. That concludes committee reports. Let's go on to new business. Madam Clerk, can you read the first item under new business?
24-0497, a resolution approving the appointment of Christopher Linville as Superintendent of Fleet Operations.
With no objections, I'm going consent. Need to read the next item.
24-0499, a resolution approving the appointment of John Zagul as Communications Manager.
Consent.
With no objections, item going consent. Read the next item.
240500, a resolution approving the appointment of Matthew Winthers as video production manager.
Consent.
No objections, item go on consent. Next item.
240504, a resolution approving the appointment of Thomas King as brand and marketing manager.
Consent.
No objections, item go on consent. Next item.
240506, a resolution authorizing the engagement of Korn Ferry for consulting services related to the compensation of the city's elected officials in a total contract amount not to exceed $23,940.
With no objections, item go,
Mr.
I'm
Mayor,
sorry, Alderman.
If I can elaborate on that, because I know Alderman Masiacos had a question. So,
Okay.
at the Finance Committee meeting, we had talked about for the last 2 cycles, we use basically comparables, whether that be in the city of Chicago or local, other local municipalities like Joliet, Elgin, Kane County, DuPage County, to come up with what we figured was fair and appropriate compensation for the alderman and the mayor over the last 2 terms. We have not used the Hay study, which we use for staff reports, but we thought this might be a good time to do it just to make sure that we are, right in where we need to be, because they're professionals to do that. I didn't ever know that they actually did that. I thought they did it for staff. So we felt that it was probably a good idea to go forward with this time. We could certainly use that going forward for the next 4 years and 8 years as a blueprint for that, but we just want to kind of figure out what they see from a market analysis, where we should be for compensation. So we're going to probably go 2 directions. We're going to use, if it's approved tonight, we'll use the Hay study in addition to our comparables and kind of come up with a hybrid, good decision based on all the information we can gather. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it right now. So I just want to make it clear where we were at with all that stuff.
Alderman Masiacos, do you have any further questions on it?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Alderman. Appreciate that explanation. My question would be, I think, similar question when we voted on aldermanic and mayoral compensations last time. If staff can help us out, or help me out, didn't we use the Chamber of Commerce once upon a time?
Mr. Alexander.
If we did, what was the cost to utilize the Chamber of Commerce?
I would have to go back and figure out that cost, but at the end of the day, I believe the council chose not to utilize those recommendations then from the Chamber of Commerce. But it was one of the times that we used, sometimes like we use them as a third party. Other times, I think most of the time, staff did the work through HR to do the comparability study. This time, I think Alderman Franco had suggested we use Hay, who's a national compensation expert, has the ability to find comparable elected official and mayoral compensation, and then we would also do our own. And I know Alderman Bugg came up with some good comparables at the Finance Committee, which we took note of. And so that's, that was a long time ago. I think
It had to be at least 12 years, only
Yes.
because I've done this for the last 8, so it had to be before that. It's 12 or more, so that
I
was
believe
why it
so.
was- yeah.
I believe when I first came on board about 11 years ago, the Chamber was used around that time. But nonetheless, I will take you up on that offer to provide that information in regards to the Chamber and what that.
we'll look for it.
I appreciate it. And this is not going to be voted tonight, right?
No,
That was
it was
going
a
to
work
City
in progress.
Council,
This is a work in
so it'd be on unfinished.
Well, yeah, so
Alderman-
we probably won't even come up with something to bring to the council probably for another month, probably, based on getting the information. So there's
I'm sorry, you're talking about the results of the survey.
We're talking about the results and analyzing the results.
Yes.
And coming up with
So tonight's item is just to
approve the money
so
to
we
pay
can
for the.
authorize Hay
Right,
to
right,
do their work.
Right, just, yes, absolutely.
Alderman Seville.
Yeah, I could say, from my memory of serving on the Finance Committee, starting in 1985, that we asked the Chamber of Commerce to conduct studies from time to time, and they did not charge us any fees. So.
Alderman, sorry, this has been a long day already. Alderman Lash.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I don't have any problem hiring Hay for the amount of money that is in this agenda item. I guess I just wanted to clarify something. It looks just at municipalities, comparable municipalities, because you had mentioned townships, and then you and I talked offline about county boards, and I'm hoping that the study will show us pay per population district, because I think district size matters a little bit in this calculus.
Well, and I will say this, the ones that we have here, There is more. I mean, this is what they gave us today, but we'll accumulate more. I mean, this is just, I mean, I think I submitted a whole bunch more. There's paperwork there, so we'll get more of that. But you're right. We'll go townships, we'll do county boards and stuff like that, because it makes a difference. If you represent somebody, you know, if you represent 20,000 people, what is that compared to somebody else? I mean, so is it different that a county board member represents 20,000 or city? So it's always hard, but you can kind of built that into the equation. So yeah, we're going to gather all that because we want to make sure at the end of the day it's an appropriate amount, and unless we gather all that information in addition to the Hayes study, we may be overcompensated, undercompensated. We want to be in that sweet spot. So we'll take it all into consideration.
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman,
Thank you.
Alderman Warman first, if he's got something. You good? You good? I just want to say your name, brother. Mr. Alexander.
So just to clarify, at the Finance Committee, we said as at least a minimum baseline, we're going to have Hay look at like municipalities with, you know, looking at part-time aldermen, mayoral, strong mayor form of government, start at least there so we have a tranche of information that's comparable, then extend it out. So, you know, there were great examples, like I said, given by Alderman Bugg, and try and make it population-based as well per the representative or per the mayoral position in those situations.
Alderman Smith?
Yes,
Oh, I'm
so-
sorry, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I just have to back you up just a little bit. When these positions started many, many years ago, I understand that they were part-time. There's no way in the world that I work part-time in this job, so I'm hoping that there's some factors in this as well when we're looking at this. So.
Well, let me give you a scenario, and then this is what we considered before, and it's a tough one because it's the city of Chicago. If you're an alderman and you represent X amount of people, it is what it is. Each alderman represents 50,000 people. They call themselves full-time. They get paid $140,000. We represent 40% of that, and our compensation is maybe 15% of that. So these are the things. Now I don't know if that's apples and oranges, but these are the things you kind of look at. So we take a good look at all that kind of stuff. That might be not a good comparison, but if you look at a head count is a head count. Somebody in Chicago that needs their street fixed is the same thing as Aurora. They need their street fixed. So, you know, you kind of look at that. So we'll take a look. We've always done that, but we'll take a look at that. We'll combine it all. It's, you know, we'll throw it in the blender and see what comes out basically at the end.
Alderman Warman? Man, I got Alderman Warman on the mind today, man. Say something, brother.
I mean, he called me an alderman twice, so I'm a little concerned.
Alderman Lash.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say that I agree with Alderwoman Smith on this, that I think if it does come back, we may want to entertain that full-time role as some part of the discussion. So if we could make room for that when it comes back for discussion. Thank you.
So I just want to make clear tonight, though, this is a resolution to vote on the paying for the Hay study.
Engaging Hay at the amount listed, correct?
At the amount, well, yeah.
Correct.
I'm the blue collar guy. I say pay for, you engage.
Is that consent?
Unfinished.
Unfinished. Ms. Yago says unfinished. All right, read the next item.
240507, a resolution authorizing the City of Aurora to enter into a memorandum of agreement with the Census Bureau to conduct a special census for $1,005,968.
Consent.
Consent, no objection.
Can I have staff give a report on this?
Another one? Right. As it were. No, Alderman Warman. Everybody's Alderman Warman tonight.
Everybody wants to be.
Exactly right, brother. Hey. There is no need for a closed session tonight. There's been a motion adjourned by Alderman Smith, seconded by Alderman Franco. All in favor? Aye. This meeting is hereby adjourned.